Um, it is February 10th, I think. It's early-ish in the morning. It's about like 9, which is slightly earlier than I would normally be up. But I'm in the backyard with my dogs, just letting them out for a little bit. And I started thinking about choices, which was something that I wanted to talk about yesterday and then didn't end up doing it because there was a lot that I wanted to kind of talk about, and I knew that I wouldn't have been able to cover all of it, at least in a coherent manner. So yeah, I started thinking about it, and particularly the question of like how my life would be different if I had made different choices. And it's not like this is a novel idea or anything. Plenty of people throughout history have thought about this, right? But as far as it goes in my life, I feel like there were a lot of, I guess, opportunities where if I had only chosen differently, my life would be like drastically different. The particular event that was sort of sticking in my mind right before like starting this recording was at the end of high school, when I was trying to decide where I wanted to go for college. And my choices were, to be fair, very limited. At the end of high school, it's not like I was like a particularly excellent student. I feel like I didn't have any particular sort of skills or talents or anything of the sort that like set me apart from your average applicant. My GPA was fairly average. I feel like just to say that I was overall a fairly average student coming out of high school, and my options were to stay in state or go to the one out-of-state school that I got accepted into. Those two being the University of Nevada, Reno, which of course is where I ended up going, or the University of California, Irvine. And every now and then I just think about like what my life would have been like, how different it would have been if I had gone to Irvine instead. I didn't end up going purely because of how much it would have cost me. Of course, being in, well, I guess maybe this isn't common knowledge for anyone outside of the US, but typically if you go to college in the state that you reside in, it is significantly cheaper than if you were to try to go to school outside of your home state, or or in my case at least, that was how it was. And I don't remember off the top of my head how much tuition would have been at Irvine. I want to say it would have been at least $20,000 a year. Compared to practically half the cost of that if I at UNR. My dog is like growling at something, I don't know what. So the very obvious choice. At least I thought it was obvious. Loki. The obvious choice for me was to stay in state, and there are a lot of reasons why I'm very glad that I ended up doing that, because I met a lot of people who are now my friends, who are still my friends. And I met a lot of people who mean a lot to me now through staying in state. It's just, I wonder what kind of person I would have been like coming out of college had I gone to Irvine. I don't dwell on it too much because of course it's in the past. It's not like I can really do anything to change the fact that I didn't go to Irvine, but it's just something that, you know, crosses my mind every now and then, and it makes me wonder what choice of like major I would have picked if I had ended up going down the same route that I ended up going down while at UNR. That is to say, starting off as a physics major, dropping that major and picking up a psychology major, which was not the best decision in and of itself, but I think that's a topic for another time. Actually, no, it's not a topic for another time, because that is also something involving choice. I don't know how much detail I want to go into regarding my choice to go into college with a having picked a physics major, and I don't know how much I want to go into detail regarding choosing psychology or switching to psychology, but at the very least, I have always been very, very, very interested in math. I really like math. I like the patterns in it, the predictability of it. I guess the rules of it. It's very, how do I describe this? The phrase that's coming to mind is boxed in, but of course that's not necessarily the case when it comes to like other denominations of the field of mathematics, things like applied mathematics. If we think about like quantum physics, there's a lot of math heavily involved in that. That's not quite like that's sort of up in the air, is what I'm trying to say, is because quantum mechanics, a little side note, a little tangent, is very much not based on any sort of theory. Not necessarily the case, but it sort of depends. But a lot of it is rooted in experimental findings, and so the math involved is pretty variable, is what I'm trying to say. But I've always liked math, and I think physics was just sort of this choice that, I don't know, I thought that maybe I could get some sort of viable job in the field, because I was particularly looking at like astrophysics and particularly astrophysics, and I at the time had really lofty, I don't want to say goals, but aspirations to work at the Jet Propulsion Lab, or at least to be a part of that. And not to say that like I'm not intelligent enough to do it. Honestly, I kind of think that I'm not intelligent enough to do it, but I think that part of it is also just because of like my foundation in physics wasn't the best, and so through college, as I was progressing through my physics major, my understanding of it got worse and worse because my foundation had not been great. And that's probably telling of the quality of the education and the faculty that tried to teach me physics. It's not at all indicative of how intelligent those faculty members are, but at some point I was like, this is not viable for me, this isn't feasible for me this isn't sustainable for me. And so I think it was in my junior year, or rather I think it was in my sophomore year, I picked up the psychology major. I had not yet dropped the physics major, but at the time I was like thinking to myself, well, what could I do that not only interests me, but at the time I put a lot of weight on what other people wanted for me and how I could address their concerns, their anxieties, and I was playing by someone else's book for a good part of, if not all of, college when it came to the decisions that I made. And I chose a field that I was vaguely and somewhat interested in, for reasons maybe that, like, I was interested in psychology for reasons that I feel like should not be the reasons you go into psychology. That being, like, I was thinking about, like, my skills, I guess, and what it was that what I thought I was good at. And through a good portion of my childhood, into my teen years, having grown up with unfettered access to the internet, I was constantly sort of being exposed to things that, like, a child should not be exposed to, first of all, and also to people who were looking for community and companionship. And I often but I often ended up being there for other people in a way that I don't think was very good for my development, first of all, but also my own mental health. And when I had picked up the psychology major, excuse me, I was thinking about how, like, that was something that I thought fulfilled me, and that isn't to say that being there for other people doesn't fulfill me now, but I feel like I was thinking too much, or I was too much in the mindset of that wounded teenager that wounded teenager that was trying to be something for other people, that I did not consider what it was that I really truly wanted and what it was that I really truly wanted to do. That of course isn't to say that I didn't consider wanting to pursue writing when I first went into college. Again, I very heavily played to other people's books and didn't leave a lot of room, if any room, for my own desires, my own aspirations, for my inner child, I guess. Because that is actually a lot of like the motivation behind what I'm doing now, is to honor and fulfill the child in me that didn't get to be heard, that was sort of pushed down by other people's expectations and what the real world, I guess you could say, or the expectations that the real world sort of places on, I mean, everyone, right? It's kind of a working class. It's I feel like an expectation placed upon the working class that you have to pick a career that is viable, that is thriving in this economy or whatever the fuck. But my point is that I made decisions that were for other people and not for me. And it has led me to here. I mean, well, rather, I mean, I'm leaving out a part between when I graduated and now, which I mean, I can talk about it. It's not like it's a secret or anything. It's not like there's anything damning about what I'm about to say. But after I graduated college, I was set on trying to find a place in the mental health field in my home state. And because okay, I'm just gonna out myself. I live in Nevada, and Nevada is not the best when it comes to mental health care. I think that it was in 2022 or 2020, no, it was in 22. I was taking a graduate level course on intro to counseling, and my professor at the time had shown us I don't want to use the word audit because I don't think it was exactly an audit, but it was a statement of some sort, kind of talking about how bad the mental health care is in this state for minors particularly, for teenagers particularly, and how rehospitalizations were particularly bad for that age group. And that is just to say that it's not, mental health care in Nevada is not like the greatest. And at the time I wanted to be a part of bettering that, and that was why I was taking that class. It was why my first job out of college was it was technically a community clinic that provided services for primary care for psychiatry as well as therapy. But I worked primarily in the therapy office. Granted, I was just in an administrative role, and so it wasn't like I was seeing patients or anything, or seeing clients. But I was exposed enough to the ins and outs of it. And granted, we were serving a very particular population in Reno. We were particularly trying to help homeless people find care as well as housing. And so there was a lot of moving parts in this clinic. There was a lot of there was just a lot going on. And so part of my role involved not just therapy, but having to coordinate with psychiatry, primary care, having to coordinate with the people doing intakes for homeless people who were coming in seeking housing or seeking care. So it was kind of all over the place, as a lot of community care, I feel like, can be, i.e. hectic and all of that, which of course doesn't diminish how important the work is, but it sort of exposed me to I feel like the systemic failures of the system. I mean, like, obviously it's just I don't have a better word, but it sort of opened my eyes to how one needed services like the ones that the clinic that I was working for provided, but also, again, the ways in which just how badly our government has failed people. Not only that, but shortly after leaving that job, I had started working as a oh my god. Psychosocial rehabilitation worker. I don't know why I completely forgot the term for it. I was working as a PSR worker, which, for people who don't know what PSR workers are and sort of what they do, they are a type of mental health provider covered, and so they are particularly forgive the noise and the sudden environment change. I just ended up going inside because I knew that was probably going to last a very long time, whoever was blowing leaves in their backyard. But PSR workers, they are a particular service that is offered, I think, only to people who have Medicaid. Because I don't think other insurance companies cover PSR. As far as, like, in my experience, that was how it was when I was very briefly working as a PSR worker. But they are an additional I guess they're more of like a supplemental mental health care provider. So they don't provide therapy. They offer, it's like they're like peer support, I guess. So part of my job was to set goals with clients and help them achieve those goals. So just to give an example, I had this one client who struggled a lot with, doing laundry and putting away laundry, cleaning in general. And something that I was working, well, that was what I was working on with her. What I was doing in my role in working with her was introducing ways in which she could accomplish, say, for example, the goal of putting away her laundry for the week. So to give an example of something that I had told her at the time was, which is actually a philosophy that I live and stand by even now, is that something is better than nothing. So even if you put away just a shirt, that is better than nothing. I introduced her to the Pomodoro technique. I know that's typically used for studying, for students who are trying to study for exams or something, but I felt at the time that using the Pomodoro technique of doing something for 25 minutes and then taking a break for 5 minutes would help to slowly build up that, I guess, motivation, not really motivation, but executive functioning in order to put away her laundry. But yes, what I was doing was more supplemental to the therapy that she was going through. And part of my role as a PSR worker actually had a lot to do with children, which I'm not particularly fond of working with children, at least children under the age of like 15. But the thing that really sort of radicalized me, not to say that it was then that I was completely radicalized. To be honest, I've sort of been radical. I think it was the first time was, I think the what really radicalized me was actually it was either in 2015 or 2016 when Michael Brown was killed by police. And that was sort of when I first realized how the police brutalized Black people in America. I was like 14, 15 at the time. But I digress, that's kind of beyond the point. But working with the children that I was working with, they often had diagnoses of like ADHD or some sort of neurodivergence, and it made me realize just how restrictive Medicaid is as far as treatment goes in like the PSR realm. It also opened my eyes to how stigmatized and how not very well understood ADHD particularly is in young children. Not to say that like the science isn't there, but in the general population, I feel like not a lot of people understand how to navigate a child's ADHD, particularly in a classroom, because a lot of the kids that I was working with had trouble in the classroom. And maybe I'm just weak, but it really disillusioned me. And so it sort of pushed me out of that field. This isn't to say that I wouldn't consider going back. There was a part of me that really considered picking up another PSR job here in my home city, but I don't think I would want to work with children, if I'm being honest. At least, again, children younger than 15. But yes, that my 2 years working in the mental health field, at least in Nevada, really disillusioned me. And at the time, it was sort of perfect timing because I had to come home, which I had mentioned in the last video. I came home for a medical emergency that was going on within my family. And at the time, my lease in Reno was, what's the word? My lease was about to be up, and I had the question posed to me of whether I wanted to stay or if I wanted to come back home. I chose to come back home, of course, and I feel like it was through all of that I sort of learned the power of choice. It was as if, because I feel like this happens early on in development, where children will learn their agency, right? It was as if in 2013, when I moved back home, I learned agency for the first time, which is kind of sad when you think about it. But I feel like since then, I've become a person that is, how do I phrase this? I feel like since 2013, I've begun to live more for myself than for other people. And in that time since, it has taken a lot to continue to stand by my choices. And I know that going forward, it is going to continue to take a lot to stand by my choices. It has put a lot of doubt in me, and doubt in my own capabilities, my own capability to make my own choices, doubt in my own agency. But I feel like through the choices that I have made since coming out of high school, I've learned things about myself that I don't know if I would have had I made different choices. My hair is a mess. I gave myself a bit of a trim last night, and it's just kind of flat and not sitting the way that I want it to. My hair is usually pretty wavy, but it's gotten quite flat overnight, but that's besides the point. So yeah, I've made a lot of bad choices over the years, but everything that has come out of those choices has not been bad. Not everything that has come out of those choices has been bad, is what I want to say. There's been a lot of good that has come out of my poor decision making. A lot of good that I am very grateful for. But yes, there's no lesson here. Just me talking about all the really not great, not well thought through decisions that I've made. But I am here, and we will see where I will be in a few months, or a year, or 2 years, or 5, or 10, or however long. So that is all.